We're looking at a two-phase construction site in many of the so-called Inca stone monuments.
What if the greatest wonder of the ancient world is actually hidden in the dirt? The walls of Sacsayhuamán are incredible, but they are just the tip of the iceberg. New scans show that the foundations go deep into the bedrock with a level of engineering that seems impossible for the time. For starters, these lower levels are perfectly aligned with the stars and have magnetic powers that scramble compasses. It is a massive, buried structure that suggests someone was here long before the Incas. Get ready, because the secrets in the deep are about to be revealed. Shadows of the Andes. The massive walls of Sacsayhuamán in Cusco, Peru, are some of the most impressive things ever built by human hands. These giant stones fit together so well that you cannot even slide a piece of paper between them. Some of these rocks weigh more than 120 tons. That is the same as 24 elephants. But here is the catch. As recent dig sites are now showing, these walls do not stop at the grass. They extend far below the surface with the same level of precision and size as what we see on top. This is huge because it means we are looking at a massive structure that was much bigger than anyone thought. Basically, the part we see is just the roof of something much more complex. What most people do not realize is that there is a two-phase building site here. The Incas are the ones usually given credit for this, but the lower levels look different. They are more massive and use a style that seems even more advanced. This has led to the idea that Sacsayhuamán is not just a fortress, but the lid of something buried and sealed away on purpose. Beneath those giant stones lies more than just dirt. There are tunnels that nobody is allowed to enter anymore. These tunnels go far out into the mountains, connecting different sites together, like an ancient subway system. The mysteries go much deeper than just the surface. There are stories of magnetic fields that make compasses spin in circles, and rumors of rooms that swallow people whole. Who really built what is beneath the ground? And why is it still off limits today? Long before experts brought radar tools to the site, local people talked about a world beneath the stones. They spoke of hidden rooms and endless hallways that led to secrets the world was not ready to see. When ground-penetrating radar was finally used in the 2010s by international teams, those stories started to feel very real. The experts were looking for the foundations of round buildings, but they found anomalies instead. They found deep holes, angled rooms, and carved tunnels stretching down from the main area. Specifically, under the tower called Muyuk Marca, the radar showed things that should not be there. It looked like hollow hallways cut through solid rock. These were not natural caves. They were made with straight lines and sharp corners that do not happen in nature. This was no accident. The structures beneath the ground were made on purpose and then hidden away. In fact, several of the known doors to these underground features were officially sealed by the government in the early 20th century. This happened mostly near the area called the Chincana Grande, which means the Great Labyrinth. Why would they do that? Well, according to the archives in Cusco, many young explorers went into the tunnels over the years, and some of them never came home. One scary case in 1923 involved a teenager whose disappearance caused a massive panic. After he vanished, the government closed the entrances. The only thing found later was a broken wall and burn marks inside a hidden room. No official answer was ever given for what happened to those people. But the most startling fact is how far these tunnels might go. Some say they run all the way from the fortress to the Temple of the Sun in the middle of Cusco. That is a distance of over 1¼ miles. That is not just a small hole in the ground. That is high-level planning. Some people think the Incas found these tunnels and just reused them, meaning they were built by a lost civilization that was around way before them. Others point out how similar these are to the vaults under the pyramids in Egypt. Could these have been escape routes for priests, or were they used to hide gold from invaders? To this day, the radar studies in the main zone are not finished. The crazy part is that the work is often stopped by unexplained electronic problems. Radio signals drop out and cameras stop working for no reason. One theory is that the area has a natural magnetic pull. Another crazier idea is that there is old technology buried deep in the rock that still has power. Whatever the truth is, the real story of this place is still buried under our feet. But the mystery of the tunnels is only the start of the secrets. the stone that sealed the world. Just a short walk from the main walls sits an object so huge it feels out of place. It is nearly 29 feet long and weighs over 200 tons. Local people call it the Tired Stone. It sits on a tilt against a hill, looking like it just gave up during its trip to the fortress. And that is putting it lightly, because the legends say that is exactly what happened. According to the old stories, thousands of workers were trying to move this rock from a place miles away. But during the move, it slipped and rolled over, crushing an entire group of workers. After that disaster, people said the stone was cursed. But there is a deeper mystery here. Behind this giant stone, there is a cutout in the earth that is partly buried by rocks and plants. In the early 1900s, explorers claimed this hole was actually a front door. They said it was big enough to walk through, and that it led right into a huge tunnel under the rock formation. Old Spanish records from the 16th century even mention a grand underground path starting from this exact spot. They said it led to hidden rooms full of golden statues. These stories made people think the stone did not stop by accident. They think it was put there on purpose to block the entrance to something valuable. In 1989, a team of local and German researchers tried to dig around the Tired Stone. According to some secret notes from the Historical Society, they found a man-made hole nearly 13 feet deep. They saw tool marks on the walls and what looked like the start of a staircase. But then, only a few days into the work, the project was stopped suddenly. The official reason was that the hill was not safe, but the rumor was that the researchers found writing and symbols that were not Inca or Spanish. They were much older. No photos were ever shown to the public, which only made people more curious. Later, in 1996, an infrared scan from a plane showed strange heat patterns under the stone. This suggested there was a hollow room down there. Even with this evidence, no new digging has been allowed. Why is there so much hesitation? Some say the government wants to protect the site because it is sacred. Others believe it is about keeping what is down there a secret forever. It feels like the work was just dropped, and everyone left in a hurry. Maybe a big disaster happened, or maybe they were told to leave by someone in power. The stone is sitting there like a giant lock on a door we are not allowed to open. And the crazy part is that this stone is not the only thing that seems out of place. When you look at the very bottom of the walls, you see things that do not make sense. The stones at the lowest level are often bigger than the ones on top. This goes against the normal rules of building. Usually you put the biggest stones at the bottom for a foundation, but the Incas usually made their work better as they went up. Here, the bottom looks like it was made by a different group with different tools. The bottom layers are anchored right into the mountain rock. It is like the builders were carving the mountain itself rather than just stacking blocks. The tool marks on these buried stones are wide and deep. They do not look like the marks made by the copper tools the Incas used. It is hard to imagine how they did this with just basic hammers. It seems more like they had a way to soften the rock or cut it with something much stronger than metal. This leads to the theory that the Incas inherited a core structure that was already there. They might have just built on top of something ancient that they found. We see this at other sites too, where very perfect work sits on top of massive, rougher stones that are hard to date. In many cases, there is no organic material to test, so these lower layers are basically time-locked. They could be thousands of years older than we think. The deeper we look, the more it seems like the mountain was reshaped, engineering the living rock. One of the most unsettling parts of the mystery is what happens when the ground wears away and shows the lowest levels of the walls. These are not just simple foundations to hold up the weight. They are an entirely separate tier of building that shouldn't be there according to history. In some spots, the stones at the very bottom are even larger than the famous ones on the surface. They are buried deep in the bedrock in a pattern that does not match any other Inca style. This breaks all the rules. Usually, a civilization gets better at building over time, but here, the oldest stuff looks the most difficult to make. Experts who studied the rock layers say these stones were cut right into the living rock of the mountain. It is as if the mountain and the building are one single piece. The tool marks are broad and deep, and they do not show the rhythmic tapping patterns of Inca stone workers. Yeah, about that. You really cannot do this with copper chisels and stone hammers. It would take forever, and the tools would break. So, how did they do it? Even more confusing are the water channels found in these buried levels. They are way more advanced than what you would need just to move rainwater. Some of these channels slope inward, taking water deep underground instead of away from the walls. Engineers think these might have been used to control pressure or to stop the ground from turning into mud during an earthquake. This raises a big question. Why put so much effort into building complex systems that were meant to be hidden underground? Local elders have said for a long time that Sacsayhuamán was built from the inside out. Most historians ignored this, calling it just a myth. But when you look at the modern engineering and the geology, that phrase starts to sound literal. If you were building a massive machine or a power plant, you would start with the internal systems first. Maybe the walls on top are just the shell for something much more functional buried inside the hill. Wait until you hear how these stones actually sound when you stand near them. There is a whole other layer to this mystery that is not about what you see, but what you hear. People visiting the site have reported strange echoes between the zigzag walls. When you clap your hands or shout, the sound does not just bounce back. It echoes in a way that feels like the walls are amplifying it or changing it. In 2005, a team of scientists tested the sound in the area. They found that certain frequencies were much stronger between the walls than anywhere else nearby. It was as if the whole place was tuned like a giant musical instrument, but it gets even weirder. There are local stories about breathing stones. People say that at sunrise or sunset, they can hear a rhythmic pulsing sound coming from the base of the rocks. It sounds like a slow breath. In 2018, a big expedition recorded low vibrations near the water area that moved in a wave pattern. Officials said it was just the wind, but some researchers think the stones are vibrating because of the hollow rooms underneath them. This brings back old theories that the fortress was built on a fault line to interact with the Earth's energy. The choice of different rocks, like limestone and andesite, might have been for a functional reason, like a giant battery or a resonator. Could these stones have been used to harness the vibrations of the Earth itself? Seismic vibrations and ancient tech. The idea that stones can breathe or talk sounds like a fairy tale, but the data says something else is going on. When you stand in the middle of those zigzag walls, the air feels different. The sound resonance is so perfect that it feels intentional. Some believe it was a way for the priests to communicate or to create a spiritual experience using sound. But others think it was much more practical. They think the stones were arranged to catch low-frequency vibrations from the Earth. The fit of the stones is so perfect that the walls are basically earthquake-proof. During a big shake, the stones move slightly and then lock back into place. This is high-level engineering. But the magnetic quirks are what really baffle people. Over the last 20 years, people have found that compasses just do not work in certain spots. The needles spin or point the wrong way. In 2008, researchers used special tools to measure the magnetic fields. They found that only certain stones cause the interference. The strange part is that the disturbances are not always there. They come and go. One day a spot is magnetic, and the next day it is not. A drone flown over the area once lost its navigation because of a sudden spike in magnetic activity right above a stone joint. There was no metal or wires nearby, just rock. This has led to the theory that the builders understood how to charge the stones, or that the stones are focusing natural electric currents from the Earth. Some even suggest the stones were changed at a molecular level using sound or heat to make them fit so perfectly. While most history experts say this is not true, they cannot explain why the instruments keep picking up these signals. It makes you wonder if we are missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Maybe the site was a giant energy node used for something we don't understand yet. And then there is the way the whole place is lined up with the sky. Most tourists just look at the walls, but the whole complex is actually a map of the stars. In 2016, a study showed that the fortress lines up perfectly with the sun during the solstices. When the sun rises on the shortest or longest day of the year, it sits exactly behind specific stones. This was not just a fortress, it was a giant calendar. The zigzag walls might represent lightning, but they also track the shadows of the sun across the valley. These shadows point to specific caves or platforms that were used for farming. They could tell exactly when to plant or harvest. But the mystery is that many of these solar alignments point directly to the buried entrances we talked about earlier. It is like the sun is telling us where to look. The people who lived here were encoding time and space together. The surface stones marked the heavens, while the tunnels underneath tracked the earth. Maybe they were leaving a message for the future. Even the Spanish invaders thought the Inca priests were keeping records in the stones. But the most confusing parts are the carvings found on the remote hillsides. The final message of the ancients. If you walk past the main fortress and into the rocky hills, you find things that make no sense at all. There are cutouts in the rock that are perfect geometric shapes. These are not buildings or walls. They are just shapes carved right into the mountain. Some look like stairs that lead to nowhere. Others look like perfect seats or flat platforms. They do not seem to have any purpose at all. In 2013, a drone survey found a place they call the Inverted Temple. It is a huge rock where 3 deep holes were cut at perfect 90-degree angles. The edges are sharper than what you could do with bronze tools. One investigator said it looked like it was made with a modern machine. But there were no machines back then. So how did they get the rock so smooth? Some of these stones have small bumps on them called bosses. You see these same bumps on ancient stones in Egypt and Turkey too. Experts have argued about what they are for. Were they for lifting the rocks? Or were they some kind of code? No one knows for sure. Then there are the platforms with long, straight grooves. Some lead toward underground cracks and then just stop. Were they for moving water? Or were they part of an energy system? What makes these carvings so strange is that they are all alone. They are not part of a big city or a wall. They are just sitting out in the middle of nowhere. It is as if someone was practicing their building skills, or leaving behind the parts of a project that they never finished. They match the high quality of the main fortress, but they don't have a clear job. All of this, the tunnels, the magnetic stones, the solar maps, and the impossible carvings, tells us that Sacsayhuamán is much more than a fortress. It is a massive, complex structure that is mostly hidden from us. We are only seeing the very top layer of a much older and more advanced world. Are we missing the key detail that ties it all together? It makes you wonder if all of this could happen again, or if we are walking over a sleeping giant every day. The thing is, the more we learn, the less we actually know. Every time we find a new tunnel or a new magnetic spot, the story gets more complicated. We are looking at a puzzle that has been buried for thousands of years, and we are only just starting to move the dirt. Outro. Is it possible that the real purpose of this place is something we aren't even capable of understanding yet? Or is the answer waiting in the tunnels we aren't allowed to enter? Do you think the government is hiding something big down there? Let us know what you think in the comments, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries.